Good morning, everybody. I'm still getting a little bit set up here, so if you just give me another 15 seconds, I'll have everything ready. We'll be able to start playing. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to be playing some Kerbalism today. Now, when we had left off on Monday, there were a few things currently on the stove, I guess, so to speak. You can look at our Kerbal construction time build list. Within our VAB, we have our money 001. That is designed to be a small research vessel that will probably not work, but it's designed to go around the Mun and then come back and attempt to re-enter the atmosphere, and so we'll be able to collect some samples that way. Additionally, within our tech section, we are currently upgrading our launch pad, and that is scheduled to complete in about 1 day. Now, I was looking on here yesterday, and one of the issues that we were encountering, actually I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's work on some other upgrades and purchases that I would like to make. So the first change that I would like to make is within our contracts. We currently only have the one contract, and that is to place a relay satellite in orbit around the Mun. And to accomplish that, what we had done in our research and development was we had gone down into basic science, and we had gotten this basic science node. And part of the basic science node is this HG5 high gain antenna, which is part of the probes before crew mod that we're using, which changes this whole tech tree, makes it more, I don't want to say realistic because it's still not that realistic, but it places a larger emphasis on probes earlier in the game, and then you get the crew capsules, that kind of stuff later in the game, and that I find that plays really well with Kerbalism. But either way, as part of that, this HG5 high gain antenna was actually updated to use a 20 megameter antenna reading instead of 5, which actually makes this a pretty good candidate for a starter relay around Kerbin and the Mun. Once you start getting into Minmus, which I think its altitude or its radius around Kerbin is at around 40 megameters. It might be 41. Might even be completely wrong. You'd want to get into additional antenna, which there is this HG20 high gain antenna. Now, this HD20 high gain antenna is nominally added by Restock Plus, which does not play super well with probes before crew, in that the HD20, when it is added, is a 20 megameter antenna. Well, probes before crew had modified the HD5 to be 20 megameters, so there's would be no difference between the two. Now, I've gone into the part list and I modified this to be 80 megameters. Now, Restock Plus did add a few extra antenna beyond this, and from what I can tell, they seem to be pretty okay with how they work. I think probes before crew only modifies a few of the antenna, and the HG5 is the one that gets changed the most. So just modifying this up to 80, I hope that's okay. It makes kind of sense to me. This has 4 times the, you can't really tell. You might be able to, click on that so it's up. It has 4 little dishes on there. The HD5 only has 1, so it makes sense that it's 4 times the signal strength, or 4 times the distance. Anyway, that's just one small thing I wanted to note. Now, I do want to purchase most of this. It costs 31,000 credits, which should be fine. But it's one thing to note that these upgrades don't actually get purchased. And what these upgrades do is they're related to Kerbalism. The unmanned experiment slot upgrade. This will add an additional experiment slot to probes. So instead of only being able to run the telemetry report, we can also run like the light experiment or the might experiment. And I think the probes also have things for temperature, the Geiger meter. Might have the barometer, I'm not quite sure. But usually the probes can run those additionally, which removes that part from the part count, which being that we're still using the level 1 VAB, which has a part count of 30. It could be beneficial. We'll have to look into that. And then the other upgrade is a mystery goo sample capacity upgrade, which increases the sample storage for the goo experiment from 1 to 2, which it removes some mass that's required. We don't have to have 2 mystery goos. It also removes that single part. And I think we got the Science Junior, which we could run that on the ground. I've always had some issues getting these back to the surface, but we also have the experiment return unit. So there's a whole experiment we could play around with there. We get that Probodobodyne Hex. It's just a flat upgrade from the Octo. And then we get the radar altimeter. But the thing I'm most excited about is this HD5 high gain antenna. That's the first thing that I wanted to do. The second thing was in mission control. We actually have a few potential missions that I'm super excited about. The first one is Explore the Mun probe. We're going to have to skip this first Kerbal in space for a while simply because we're using probes before crew. But Explore the Mun, we're probably going to be ignoring Minimus for the next couple of streams simply because we don't have the antenna capability. And then I don't know why I exited out of that. And then there's a few additional missions that we can take. There's a couple putting stuff in equatorial orbit around Kerbin. These are really high altitudes though. Not too bad. This one is about the same altitude as the Mun. And then we got a few put things in orbit around the Mun. Something we planned on doing anyway. This one wants a thermometer and a mystery goo. Well, luckily we have a thermometer and a mystery goo in our money, which is already built. But either way, in order to accept all of these missions, we need to upgrade our mission control. Which, let's see how long Kerbal Construction Times is going to claim that's going to take. So it's going to take 12 days. So that's something that we have to look forward to. We still have 136,000. So what I would like to do is can probably go into the vehicle assembly building so that the money rocket that we had designed and we had built last time, we may not get to launching that today. What I want to try to focus in on is improving our communication system, which would mean putting a relay up around Kerbin. And if we have time, I'd like to launch some relay satellites to go around Mun. And then we'll be in a much better situation where we can better support missions out to the Mun. Alright, let's build a... Not typing up here, is it? So comms, I'll just say comm 001. Save that for now. Now, I didn't do a full budget for a relay around Kerbin. I do have a desired orbital radius altitude, whatever you want to call it, of 1.0677 meters. 1,067,700. 1.067 kilometer. 1,067 kilometers. That's it. I'm so a little tired. Need to drink some coffee. That has an orbital period of about 2 hours. Because our antenna has a 20 megameter antenna strength, I'm not too concerned about being too high or too low. My only concern is ensuring that we can get communication lines between all of our antennas. I don't have any concerns with this. One thing we have to look into is how long we'll be on the dark side, which I did a rough calculation and I got about 15 minutes. So I just want to make sure that I have 15 minutes worth of communication. And another thing that when you get into relays, Kerbalism and the stock relay don't play that well together. They have different end goals in mind. With Kerbalism, your relay, you want it to be as strong as possible. Whereas the stock communications network prioritizes the fewest number of hops, even if those hops aren't the strongest communication strength. And the result is when you get out to Minmus, or if you get out to Duna, or a further planet, if you have multiple relay constellations in orbit, you're not necessarily going to be taking the strongest path. So that's why I have this constellation. Can't remember exactly what the mod is called. I have a list of them in the description. Like CommNet Constellation, I think is what the mod is exactly called. And it's a super simple mod. It effectively assigns frequency bands to individual antenna, and that allows you to create specific constellations and direct antenna to those constellations, which prevents that whole issue of speaking to a weaker antenna, a weaker satellite that's relay, that kind of thing. So we do have to focus on how we want to achieve that, and I had some ideas of how I would like to do that, but this relay I don't anticipate staying in orbit that long, for the simple fact that I don't have smaller rockets. I don't have a lot of the luxury items that I would normally like to have. Now, I don't plan on this performing any science. However, configure unmanned experiments. We don't need to run a telemetry report because we already have that. I would like to run the light experiment, and we could run the might experiment. We will be in space high, and we're not going to have to update our data capacity for the simple fact that we're only running this once. They're not long running, and eventually when we get 3 of these in orbit, we'll have a constant communication, so we should be fine here. Now let's just change what these look like. Alright, I don't really like gold, let's go with silver. Alright, so this is kind of the basis of our entire relay. We need generation. Or these should be fine. I mean, 2 of these would technically be fine, but let's see. In the dark, in shadow, we'll get 26 minutes. And is this accounting for simulate transmitter and planner? 26 minutes of electric charge. What happens if I'm running these guys? 16 minutes. That's still above our 15-minute minimum. So this is a viable. This is definitely a viable solution to a first relay. And so what I was going to talk about much earlier, and as my sidetrack to what I was talking about with my initial plans, was I did a little bit of research to find out what was causing this delta V issue, where I would constantly be, if I change the thrust limiter, you can see how the delta V is changing when it shouldn't be. Changing the thrust shouldn't change your total delta V. Especially if we're in a vacuum, we don't really have to care about this. And you're going to notice this is, if you pay attention down here to this delta V, every time I change this thrust limiter, it goes down a little bit. If I increase the thrust limiter, Right now it's 554. I'll decrease it to 10. It goes down to 539. It's a small delta, but it shouldn't be going down. If I increase it back to 100, it goes down even more. So it's not like it's jumping between a low number and going back to the original number. It's just going to constantly decrease until eventually, I'm not going to do this a million times. Eventually I would assume this would go down to 0. Turns out that is being caused by the Scrapyard mod. For some reason, I don't see why the Scrapyard mod would be playing around with my delta V, but it is. And I looked at the version of the mod that I'm using. I looked at the Git repo to figure out if I can see why it's doing that. Maybe it's some configuration. The way the Git repo is set up is a little bit confusing. It's not set up the way I would expect it to be. And the way they issued their releases, I use CCAN to get my mods. CCAN says the mod was updated on the 8th of January, which is the most recent one. That's the one that I have. When I look at the Git repo, it says it was released on the 8th of January, but the version numbers are different. And I looked at some of the issues. One other person reported the same issue. Either way, as long as the actual delta V that I get is correct and Scrapyard's not messing with that, I should be fine until an update gets pushed. I can truly figure out what's going on. So for the time being, I'm just going to ignore the stock KSP delta V, guesswork. I don't want to say guesswork, but what they calculate is the delta V, and I'll just be using what Kerbal Engineer Redux is reporting, which you can see it up here in this delta V calculation as 1139, which is more than twice what 521 is. So in either case, I have not budgeted a full delta V workup or calculated a full delta V budget for this mission. I always assume it's going to be around 3400 to 3600 just to get into an 80-kilometer orbit. What it would take to perform the Hohmann transfer up, I can perform that calculation, but I'm a little lazy right now. It's 6 a.m. Well, it's almost 7 a.m. So I'll just accept that it'll take a good deal amount of delta V to perform that. Do I have this? Oh, cool. I have a small... I don't like the way that looks, but I mean it works. Now I would normally like to have... How large is that? That's kind of big. I want to get something that I can push down below these antennae. I don't know if I have anything. This should have a reaction wheel. Let me double check that. Yeah, it has a reaction wheel. I mean, the mystery goo would fit, but it weighs a lot. How much does this guy weigh? The mystery goo weighs less than this, so I might use the mystery goo as a structural part. Which kind of sounds dumb, but it's like the perfect height here. Which it doesn't really even matter that much because I don't have the, what is it called? I don't have the fairing. And so when this goes up, it's gonna be very, difficult, I'll say. Now, with that being said, let me take off this decoupler real quick. And I want to quickly go over my plans for how constellations are going to work. I've only done a little bit of research into it. I don't want to say research. I only put a little bit of thought into it. Now, when this is going, there are a few, with the way CommNet Constellation works. If you put two different antennae on two different frequencies, you still do not get the combination of the antennas. And if you don't know what that means, some of the antennas are what is referred to as combinable, and they should note it somewhere. I don't see where it says combinable on it. It might not actually say it here, which I always thought that it did. It might only say it in the actual part count, like the module that's in the text file that you can modify. But some antenna are combinable, which means that, you know, this says 20 megameters. If you have two of them, it would be like the square root of some multiple. I don't know the actual function to obtain the combined value, but instead of 20 meters, you'd have two of them. It'd be like 30 megameters or something. Then you get four of them. It'd be like 45 megameters, and you know, you can go as far as you want. Each one you add would only increase your antenna rating by a little bit. With CommNet Constellation, if you were to put these on two separate, come on, go away. What's going on here? There we go. On two separate frequencies, they do not combine anymore, which for our purposes, not a huge problem, but it is something that you would need to consider. Now, my intention with this is if I'm going to be placing flags on every celestial body, which is all the planets and all the moons, I would most likely need some form of relay around most, if not all, bodies. And so having some sort of system for what I determine as frequencies is going to be very significant. Now, 0 is always regarded as the public frequency. I can't use that at all. But you can go up into like 32,000 or 64,000. I can't remember. I think it's like 2 to the power of 16. But what I'm thinking, I don't plan on having 30,000 constellations. I only plan on having like 15 constellations max. So what I would like to do is I'm gonna have these be 3-digit numbers, where 0 will be Kerbal, which is the sun, 1 is Moho, 2 will be Eve, so 3 is going to be Kerbin. This is going to be a relay around Kerbin. Now the second digit, 0, 1, 2, those are going to be moons. So 0 would be around Kerbin, which is what I plan on doing this. 1 would be around Mun, and then 2 would be around Minmus. There shouldn't ever be a 3 or 4 or 5 because there's only 2 moons. And then the third digit is going to be more specific to what this relay is doing. So I'll say that a 0 will be, should it be into the constellation? What I'm trying to debate here is if I were to put up multiple constellations. So I'm going to have this first satellite here, which has this 20 megameter antenna. At some point, I'm going to need to put up that 80 megameter antenna, which I would want to make that a second constellation. So I would have 3 of these satellites. I would then have 3 of these new satellites that have 80 megameter antennas. And then I would have a long distance one, so I can go to like Duna or Eve, and then you have to have a super long distance one that's able to reach out to Joule or, you know, one of these further systems. The super far one doesn't have to be its own relay. You just need like a single huge satellite, but I would consider that a relay in and of itself. And so you need to be able to communicate into the relay. The relay needs to be able to communicate with itself and with other relays around the body. And then the relay needs to be able to communicate with Kerbin, or it needs to be able to communicate outside of itself. An example, you're on the Mun. You have a rover on the Mun. Your rover will communicate with the Mun relay, so you communicate into it. The relay needs to communicate, you know, with the other satellites within the relay. And then the relay needs to be able to communicate out to the Kerbin relay. Then it will do the same thing, communicate down to the KSC. One of the benefits of CommNet Constellation. This is not set in stone, so I'll just make up some numbers now. 0 will be communicating into it, 9 will be communicating out of it, anything in between will just be inner relay communications, so this will be 301. Do I have the CommNet Constellation stuff here? The reason why it's complaining about 301 not existing is that it's not part of an existing constellation. Part of CommNet Constellation is you have to define the constellation. So I saved this craft. I'm going to leave this real quick, and then we're going to open up CommNet Constellation, which should be here. I might have to go into the tracking station to get it. Yep, here it is. Here's the main GUI. There's constellations, ground stations, CommNet vessels. So we don't have any CommNet vessels right now, which makes sense. Let's create a new constellation. Kerbin entry. Yeah, I'll call this Kerbin Alpha. The alpha is just a naming convention that I typically use. I normally name it different relay satellite variations depending on the strength. Is like alpha, beta, whatever comes after beta. Can't remember it right now. So call this 300, which means if something wants to communicate with the Kerbin Alpha relay, it should use 300. And then if this relay wants to communicate with Kerbin Alpha output, I'll call this as 309. Correct. Should this work? Yeah. Okay, I envision this working. I can see some weird edge cases where this might not work, but I'll have to play around with it, try to find what frequencies I like the most and how I want this to be set up for the long run, but I can do that outside of the stream. So now with ground stations, don't hide the station markers. The ground stations also have to support these. Now, so if I set this to 309, add Kerbin Alpha output, this is just going to be listening to that output. And so our Kerbin Alpha relay should be able to A, communicate with this, and B, communicate with the other antenna. So we got 300 and 309. Right, that was a very long-winded approach to say I want my satellites to talk to each other. Okay, we can go to CNC antenna, set this to 300, Kerbin Alpha, and then we're going to modify this one to talk to 309. Alright, so we got our antennas, those are set up. We have our pug, which will give us 1100. Once again, did changing this part also decrease it? No, it's just slightly different for some reason. Okay. Oh, simulating. Changing the simulation causes it to decrease too. Okay. Yeah. Alright, so both of these are set up. If I extend these antennas, yep, we're golden. I don't really like how the top of the battery shows there. That's part of the restock mod that makes that graphic look like that, but we'll just have to accept it. Put you down there. I hope I'll have to run a simulation to make sure I can actually decouple that. Put on our little mystery goo. These are stopped, should be fine. And what I will do is make you the root, and I'll make a quick subassembly for this. Did not mean to do that. In fact, let's create a custom subcategory. This one looks good. Relays. There. Alpha 20M. Now we're already starting to butt up against our part limit. 11 out of 30. I think we'll be fine. Let's see if we can. How come I don't have these parts? I must have purchased the node and just not purchased the parts yet. Yep, there we go. It's general rocketry. I purchased those parts. Do I have any other parts missing? I know there are upgrades that don't get purchased automatically, so I just want to... Okay. Yep, I have all the parts I need. Like half an hour into this stream and we haven't launched a single rocket. Hopefully we'll be able to resolve that soon. Now normally when I have 3 of these in a constellation, I would try to launch all 3 at the same time. The problem with that is I don't have fairings. Okay, so this is going to give me now even this isn't telling me that I have. Oh, make you the root again. There we go. 2,300 delta V, which is a huge amount of delta V, especially for a small pug. That should be much better. Yeah, so we're gonna get about 1,600 delta V. This will be my upper stage. The 1,600 plus another 1,100 to finalize any burn. This is already way overkill. Get a drink. So now 1,600 will finish getting my circularization. It'll also try to get me up to my apoapsis. I want to keep my periapsis pretty low so I can properly discard this stage. Sorry, I was just taking a drink of coffee. So let's say 800 delta V of this can be used to finalize my circularization, and then I'll use 800 delta V to get up to my final apoapsis. Which means I need 3,400 minus 800, 2,600, yeah, 2,600 delta V. And I need that delta V to be at sea level. Get a swivel on here. We're at 19 parts only. This is atmosphere. This is giving us around 1,800. And what is our thrust to weight? 2. Okay, so we're fine. Thrust to weight now is 1.7. Thrust to weight now is 1.4, which is what I usually like to have it. Yep, this is at sea level. We're going to get 2,600, 2,500 I'll round down, which is above the 2,400 that we wanted. I think this is a good rocket. We're within our part limit, well within our part limit. This is only a single satellite, but because we only have the one ground station, this will increase our, our communication. The time with which we are in communication with KSC, it will increase that drastically. And we can always plan our launches in the future to account for when this will be overhead. Let's see, we launch you. We have a thrust to weight of 1.4. We're going to want to launch high because we're not very aerodynamic. In fact, can I put a nose cone on here? Really, yeah, that's one way to do it. Let's see. Still 2500. This one will be happening in vacuum, which will give us 1600. And I'm gonna get 1000. I might want to just keep the nose cone on it. Puts us at 24 parts. Put some of these fins on here just because I don't trust it. So we're gonna have our COM1 mission look like this. We don't have the launch clamp, so we're just gonna have to take this as truth and let's simulate this real quick. The thing I'm most concerned about, it's not necessarily the delta V, it's whether or not we can decouple. And I do have a little bit of concerns with, after we decouple, of releasing those antenna, because they're not actually active right now. What does it say? Our thrust to weight is 0.7. Okay, I really value the thrust to weight calculations. And if the scrapyard mod is gonna mess with those, I might start turning over. I might have to get rid of the scrapyard mod. Which, the purpose of the scrapyard mod is that it works with Kerbal construction time. Whenever you recover a vessel, it will put it in some common inventory that can be reused, and that drastically reduces the amount of time. Oh, I shouldn't have tilted over. Okay. I think I'll upgrade those stabilizers to be larger. But the scrapyard mod, you recover it, it puts it into a common inventory, and then that drastically reduces the amount of time that is required when you're constructing a new vehicle if it uses those parts. So it's by all means not a required mod. It's not a dependency or any of that kind of stuff. But it is super useful if you're making like a space plane and you recover the space plane. Which, that's actually not the full use case, because the Kerbal construction time, you recover it. When you recover it, you can recover to the spaceplane hangar, which is its own thing. I feel like these winglets are we're cheating the system a little. I'm just trying to tilt over the smallest amount to have this stage at least contribute a little bit to our orbit. But I don't want to tilt over too much. Apoapsis, this is only 20 kilometers at this point. Did this malfunction? Oh, it malfunctioned. Okay, that's one of the downsides of Kerbalism. Things malfunction. Oof. Okay, so this simulation's not going to be able to finish doing what we wanted it to do. But we ended up with around 1400, which this stage had 1600. I only wanted to justify 800, but 1000 will be fine. We're way over budget on this mission. Now, the other thing that I wanted to test in a simulation is whether or not we can actually decouple. So what I will do is I'll put this in orbit and I'll just decouple until we get out of this and see what happens. Now I believe it puts us in orbit directly above KSC, but my beliefs can be wrong. I wonder if it chooses a random orbit or if it's using some weird coordinate frame. Okay, so we are directly above the KSC, so now we should be able to detach. Okay, that worked fine. We still have communication, so we can extend these. Which, yeah, it worked fine. Still have communication here, so our antennas are working. Alright, I think that is a successful simulation. We can save this, Kerbal construction time, add this to our building plans, and let's actually say to build it. Now, show height our build list. Our VAB says this will take 9 days. The launch pad will be finished in 1 day and our mission control will be done in 12 days. I would like to wait until the mission control is done because that'll give us access to these missions that we want to be working on. But I think we are almost in a situation where we can start launching rockets. Let's go here and work to complete. These little waypoints for the suggested water landing, this is for the field research that I had touched on last stream, where can't remember what the name of the research is, but it's the one where you need to get a, I don't know if it's a surface sample or a crew report or an EVA report, one of those report types from a situation where you are landed at water. Turns out those situations are only achievable at the poles. And it turns out Kerbalism doesn't play well with that kind of stuff anyway. This is done. The launchpad is complete. How do I actually finish? Okay, I guess it just worked. I don't know if I had to click on it. It was still showing up here. Oh, why did you select? Okay, doesn't matter. All right, our plane is finished. I'm gonna plane our communication satellite. I don't want to risk rolling it out because I want to accept the new contracts first. I don't know if rolling it out will technically mark it as a launched vehicle. Okay, so I'm assuming it's just kind of stuck there until we leave here, and then yep, okay, so I didn't actually have to click on anything. So we go to mission control. We now have access to 7. Sadly, there's nothing that says put a relay around Kerbin. That would have been some nice money. Explore the Mun. It's not super relevant for what we're about to do right now. But satellites. Specific orbit around Kerbin. Specific orbit around Kerbin. This one, it just wants us to build an unmanned probe. Antenna can generate power. We have that. Reach the designated equatorial orbit. We're going to do that. Our goal orbit is 1,067 kilometers. So our apoapsis will definitely be within the range of, we can make a slight adjustment to achieve this orbit first. Argument of periapsis. Okay. I think that's going to be the restricting factor here, is it's going to determine when we launch. But I think we can achieve that. We could accept this for the advanced money. It gives us almost 5 years, 4.5 years to complete this. Now SCANsat does provide us with this low resolution altimetry. Now we don't have to accept this yet, just as long as we are below, I think it's like 50% or 60% total scanned for any particular one. So this is a low resolution altimetry. We could put a satellite in space that's collecting this altimetry, and as long as we accept this before we've scanned, I think it's 60% of the planet, we can still get this mission. Once you go over that, that mission actually disappears. So satellites, specific orbit around the Mun. This one just wants a thermometer. This one wants a mystery goo. They're actually very similar orbits. Ooh, they want high inclinations. That's what their restriction is. This is a duration of 10 years. This one has a duration of 9 years. All right, I think we have everything that we need. Can I go here and roll out? Let's see what orbit this would like us to have. Okay. This is achievable. And having the apoapsis line up there actually gives us a good indication of where we want to put the apoapsis of our transfer orbit. What we might want to do, I'm trying to plan this in a way that we can easily discard that intermediate stage without leaving it in Kerbin orbit. And because I didn't plan out delta V budgets, this is just going to be a wing it and see what happens. Oh, this really takes an hour. I'll just get a starting orbit of around 296 kilometers, and then I'll boost us up. Should be fine. Which that means we don't actually have to plan when we launch our rocket. We can just go now. Right? Launch. The only thing I haven't fully tested is whether or not we can actually deploy our antennas at that altitude. We can deploy it at 75, but we'll see. First thing I'm going to do is quick save. Vessel complete. Yep. Sorry about that. I was drinking some coffee and it kind of went down the wrong pipe, I guess. Oh, we're gonna get to experience a nice sunrise here. Didn't even consider that. One thing that I want to start getting into is KOS, the Kerbal Operating System mod. I do have experience with kind of aerospace, orbital mechanics, that kind of stuff, and I do have a educational experiences in software engineering, so hopefully that mod will play well with me. Being able, a launch script is a simple script, and actually, oh, I'm going really high here. Wasn't paying attention. A launch script, I have seen a few things of what that mod is capable of achieving, and I think it might be super interesting to play with. Oh, we'll be fine, yeah. As long as we're below our periapsis, we're not losing too much. And we did not malfunction on this one. That's a good sign. So yeah, I want to start teaching myself a little KOS. I have read through their docs and got a little bit of background on it, but nothing too in-depth. And I will stop there. Hopefully by the time we reach our periapsis, or our apoapsis, the periapsis of our final orbit, the Kerbin will rotate a little bit to keep us in comms range. I'm a little concerned with it. In fact, I will quick save, but I don't want to play that way. In fact, I'm not going to risk it. I'm just going to burn. We're going to waste a little bit of fuel with this, but once again, this is the kind of thing where, oh, also I don't want to. Alright, well, I guess we don't have to worry about discarding this stage. We can just discard it. Our periapsis is at 57, so we're fine here. Oh, perfect. And we might be able to just burn straight up. Right, it's not a perfect orbit, but once we reach our apoapsis, we should be able to perform some kind of radial burn in order to achieve this. We still got 600 delta V, which I don't anticipate circularizing to be that much of an issue, and we don't even have to be in a perfect 2-hour period. We're not synchronizing multiple satellites at this point. We were able to deploy these guys, so now I don't have to concern myself too much. I'll quick save that. This was a very successful launch in my eyes. And in fact, I think if we still have a connection, which I doubt it. Yeah. I was gonna maybe see if I could perform the radial burn here. Make sure we're not going to lose our electric charge. Well, that's going to be annoying. Let's go into here. Comms. I think it's in the auto. No, it's config. If we lose our signal, we should be fine. So why did we leave our time warp? Did we lose battery? No. We didn't lose supply of anything. We didn't. Nothing failed. Okay, I don't know what caused us to leave time warp. Looks like our next orbit will be able to perform our radial out. I think it's radial out. Yep, there we go. Just wait for this mission to complete. There we go. Got 90,000 Kerbucks. Now we shall put our periapsis much closer to our apoapsis, about 1 megameter. Okay, we have our first relay satellite, and it is marked as such. So what I will do is I will, now when I have, oh, completely forgot about these, could have been running our, what's the requirement? Oh, high inclination. Okay, didn't read the fine print on that one. Wow, light completed super fast. Either way, when I have vessels in orbit for a long time, I like to have them named specific ways so I can find them easier in the tracking station. So what I normally do is Ker will be Kerbin, and then this is Comm. Could be Relay, you know, whatever you really want to name it. I'll just do Comm, and this will be Alpha 1, Alpha 01. And then if it's part of a larger constellation, I might have something like Bo and Bi and, you know, B. It doesn't mean anything, I just pick random nice sounding words. If I expect the constellation's only going to have 3 satellites, I'll, you know, it'll be like Can or Con. I just pick random names so I can distinguish them a little bit easier. The Alpha 1 is not relevant to the specific constellation. This is just meaning it's the first Alpha satellite that I've launched. I have been in situations where I've launched one of these and then I put the entire constellation around the Mun, where so the Mun would be Alpha 2, 3, and 4, and then I launched the last 2 for the constellation around Kerbin, which were then 5 and 6. Just makes it easier to know the order of launching. And then Comm means communications, Ker means this is around Kerbin. If I want to put something around the Mun, it would be Mun. I want to put something around Minmus, might make it M-I-N, Min. Either way, this is good. The light experiment is done. We have a full electric charge. Both of these are deployed. Save again. We did pretty well with this launch. It only took us an hour, but this is going to greatly, it's going to be a huge improvement to our communications capabilities. Let's go back to the Space Center, see if we unlocked any new missions. Do we only get 3 signs for that? Is that what that science value, 3 out of 3? Yeah, I think that's what it means. Let's go into mission control. Put a relay around the Mun. Gather signs, Kerbal kind. This is fly by the Mun, land on the Mun. We're not going to land on the Mun anytime soon. Start testing. The marketplace. Not a huge deal there. Satellites. Specific orbit around Kerbin. We're not too pressed for money. I could upgrade this, give us much greater part count. One thing I'm interested, where do you get the fairings? I think that's not aviation, general construction. Yeah, 45 science, so we need another, what, 17? 16? 20 sats minus 4, 16 sats, yeah. You get the protective shell. This is going to be huge when it comes to putting our constellation up, so that's what I'd like to work towards next. Which means we need to get a little bit more science. There are a few options that we can do. I think I would like to put something in a polar orbit, which will allow us to complete that MITE experiment. And let us look at what that's going to look like here. Configure unmanned experiments. So MITE, I didn't realize it had this inclination requirement. It has space low biomes and space high. So the space low biomes I'm looking into. Now, do any of the other experiments we have science, do they have space low biomes as well? This is space. This has space inner belt, outer belt, global magnetosphere. That'll be super interesting. We're planning on staying in the low belt. So we would be in, if we are in an inclined orbit, most likely a polar orbit if I can get it, which is 90 degrees inclination, we would be getting space global, space inner, and depending on how we plan our orbit, space outer. So we're going to want to put a Geiger counter on it. This is completely useless to us, and I would like to put a radar altimeter on it. So I think that's what our next mission is going to be, is just to collect some more science. Let's put another hex. At this point, I think I've deprecated the octo. It's the same weight, but this gives us stronger reaction wheels and it gives us the prograde control. So let us put in our science. Oh, that's what I was looking for. Alright, that's fine. Let's put a Geiger counter on this. Actually, because we're not doing a telemetry report, bump that up. I can set this to MITE, which is the one that requires our inclination. Then I can set this to the Geiger counter, which means that'll save us some parts. Doesn't matter because I literally just upgraded our VAB. Which, why are we able to use the VAB? Maybe we just can't construct things. One thing I would like to do is this generate the altimeters and all the SCANsat parts generate huge amounts of data to the point where I might want to have 2 of these. Plus the 8 here will give me 12 megabytes of storage. Probably not needed, but and one of the problems is this high gain antenna is our most efficient antenna. What am I trying to do? I'm trying to rotate it. There we go. There we go. Don't like that. It's always the last one you try. Alright, put you one down like that. Now let's look at here. We have a 1 hour and 20 minute duration. Are we including this in? We were not including that. Are we including these? We have about 12 minutes worth of stuff, of electric charge. I'm gonna quickly tab out to an orbit calculator. Worst case scenario, we'll be in the dark for half the time. Realistically, it'll be much less than that. But let's say we want to get our final orbit at 230 kilometers. That'll give us an orbital period of about 42 minutes. Half of that'll be about 20 minutes. So that means we want to have about 20, I'll round up 30 minutes of electric charge. Furthermore, we want our estimated solar panel output we'll notice that our duration is still low because we're consuming a lot more than what we generate, which means we want to have much greater electric charge capability. This should grant us what we need in the dark. Still no, really. In shadow we get 16 minutes. What did I say we wanted? Around 20 minutes? 20, maybe 30 minutes? Okay. $22 minutes electric charge. What I can do is put some of these guys on here. Oh, I don't like the way that looks, so I'll move that back down. Alright, 27 minutes should be fine. I don't anticipate that will give us issues there. The only thing we have to look at is our estimated solar panel output. We need to increase this. Ideally, it would be about twice what we're consuming, so we would need a lot more. A lot more solar panels. Once again, that weighs 125 kilograms. Why does that weigh so much? And then ultimately we're going to be placing a pug at the bottom of this. Looking like that. Which in 800 meters per second is going to be plenty. We just need to find a way to get this to look good. Could just stack a whole bunch more batteries on here. Come on. There we go. So now we are barely producing more than what we consume. One thing I could look into is what would happen two of these like that. I think that technically gives us a little bit more. Oof, there's a lot. And that's where the part limit's coming in. Okay. So we did upgrade the VAB, but it's going to take a few days to complete the That's not centered. What's going on there? Okay, so this is the weird one out. Okay, I'm gonna destroy you and create a copy. Why is this not playing well? All the other ones center. Okay. Sure. And I don't really like it when they clip, so I'll bring these guys out a little bit. Now I could easily remove 8 parts from this part count just by only needing solar panels on the one side. But then I have run into issues where the way Kerbalism simulates these in the background, it would slowly start to decrease. It actually looks pretty nice. Slowly start to decrease the charge, and I've had issues where when you switch to the craft, the solar panels are in the you know, they are collecting solar energy, but Kerbalism just said it wasn't when it was simulating in the background. It's kind of annoying, but I mean, it all worked, and we only want one of these. So according to Kerbal Engineer Redux, we get 275 meters per second, which should be a lot more than what we actually needed. What I would like to do is go into coupling and start building out our rocket. So we're going to need about an extra 1,000 delta V because we're going into an inclined orbit. This is going to give us 2,000 delta V, more than enough. So we will need to oops, I accidentally clicked. Oh, I don't want the black one, I want the white one. So this gives us 1,000 delta V to finish circularization, plus up to 1,000 delta V for the inclination change because we're going into a polar orbit. And then our final stage, the actual research satellite itself, will have an extra 700 delta V. That'll ensure that we can get our finalized orbit. And so I think we only need around 2,400 delta V. $2,400 in atmosphere. Which this is currently set up at thrust to weight of 1.99. Wow. Maybe if I set that to sea level. 1.5. I'll keep it at 1.5, and then I will add some solid rocket boosters. Oh, we got thumpers. Put on some hammers. Should give us the kick that we need. Sea level, we get 926 plus 1,399. That'll put us just under, getting around 2,300. According to this, I keep using the KSP numbers. This says we'll get 2,565. Plus 900? Is that what that's saying? Why is this? Oh, because atmospheric. Plus 2,000. Oh, we got so much delta V. Call this research 001. And then once it's actually launched, I'll rename it to something else. Let's see if we can simulate this, because it does not have aerodynamic surfaces, so we're going to be super unstable going up. We're at almost double our part count. Alright, can we actually simulate this at the launch pad? we're gonna get a huge amount of delta V at the beginning here, which is gonna show my delta V, not my delta V, my thrust to weight. Let's see, flight engineer, vessel, thrust to weight 3.7. Is there a way to float that? The only thing I really care about right now is our thrust to weight, which is right there. Okay. Oof, okay. What I should have done, and I completely forgot to do, is modify the thrust limiter on these guys because they are super strong. Yeah. Gives us a thrust to weight of 1.8 up to a max of 4, which if I set the thrust limiter on this guy further down, yeah, alright, we should be fine here. Should be, hopefully. No promises. So far we're doing pretty well. Thrust to weight's 1.9. Let's lower that a little bit. I want to keep it between 1.5 and 2 for this initial part of our ascent. Don't want to stray too far. We're super unstable right now. I just want to tilt to the south the smallest amount. Ooh, okay, don't do that. And we're spinning out of control. Okay, so it's a little concerning. As soon as we jettison the bottom stage, I mean, I don't want to have to put stabilizers up top, but might just be what we have to do. I could have just waited until we were at a higher altitude before fully jettisoning it. But when you have the part count super high, you can do this kind of stuff. Also, I was starting to get a little concerned with how much fuel we had. because our altitude wasn't that high when we had finished burning through this primary stage. Made me a little concerned, but we'll see. Once again, we are way over budget. I didn't think this through too well to get like a formal budget for it. Ooh. Oh, that was close. We almost lost control. Oof. Okay, that's interesting. All right. One part that's making this super difficult to control is I think this top part is really wiggly. So I might have to go in and do some rigid attachment. I don't have struts yet, so I can't auto strut anything. And I don't know if rigid attachment actually fixes anything. But we'll see. Oh, already got that one. This is one of the parts where my confusion and my not knowing the full details of how Kerbal works might play to my disadvantage. I might just be wasting my time. I don't know the difference between rigid attachment and auto strut. I know that I've always just assumed I made the connection that auto strut is a lot stronger. I don't know what rigid attachment does or why it would be two separate. One thing that might be causing our problem is this decoupler is super small. That could have been the problem in itself, and so all my rigid attachment stuff is just going to make me think that I'm smarter than I am. Lowering these down would also help with stability a little bit. And then furthermore, putting nose cones on these. All right, let's test this again. I'm not even going to touch anything. I'm just going to let this burn up for a slight amount. Maybe until we get to an apoapsis of around 20-30 kilometers before I even start tipping over. Okay, or it'll tip over on its own. Oof, that is very annoying that these basic fins are causing that problem. It's just a matter of fact that this is extremely unstable. Creates a lot of drag. There's not much I can do about it until I get the fairings, but the whole purpose of this mission is to give us access to those fairings. So what I'll do is, this stage is just going to launch straight up. I don't want my apoapsis to go too high. I want it to be below 240 kilometers, but I have a lot of fuel, so I'm willing to waste a whole bunch of it. And so hopefully I had budgeted enough to give me this leeway. I'm not even going to rotate the craft to point in the correct direction. The audio was getting a little choppy on my end. I hope you're not experiencing that as well. Okay. There we go. Okay, now it's just not working at all. Why did it flip over? It's not super unstable. I didn't click on anything. It just decided to not point in the right direction. Why did it get even more unstable? It worked the first time. Do we have some torque on here? Nope, there's no torque. Push these back up. I really don't want to have to put fins on these guys, but... Do we have a center of lift? This doesn't really work when it comes to showing drag. Oh, this rocket is so ugly. That's not correct. There it is. Those are the same height? They were not at the same height. That's one little trick you can do, is if you set this to absolute, and then you click on a part, which, hang on, it's not letting me click. And then you just click on any of them, it will actually cause it to jump into kind of a locked position, where then you can adjust it, and now you'll notice they're at the perfect height, and they're at the perfect angle. That's just a quick pro tip if you didn't already know that. Now, is there anything that I can do to improve my aerodynamic stability of this top stage? Because it's really getting on my nerves. I don't think that actually does anything, but it looks nice. I'll just try again. This time I'll click to use the prograde follow on the, or lock the prograde on the hex module. We have so many of these winglets. There's no way you can spin out of control. Started going to the west. I didn't want to go to the west. I mean, we want to go to the west a little bit, but for this part I just want to be going straight up. That's our orbit marker. We're approaching a really good inclination here, so that's actually really nice. We are high, so hopefully... Come on. Fight it. You can do this. Come on, fight. There's no way we should be spinning out. We are out of the atmosphere at this point. And with that being said, we can actually extend these antennas to ensure that we get communication. Should get a line going to this satellite eventually. So far, I consider this to be a win. With how much I was struggling before. That's assuming we can actually make orbit. Since we have 700 meters of delta V left. Yes, 700 meters of delta V. We should be fine. Just barely fine though. Why aren't you starting? Oh, this has been a struggle, but $230, and we are able to connect through a satellite, so that's good. I'll take that as a win. We got 300 meters per second to get into whatever orbit we need. I don't have a good tracking station, so we can't do this. All right, I will say that's a win. We had a little bit of delta V left over. We were able to get up there. Upper stage was a little bit complicated. We can't. Are we able to schedule this to build now, or do we have to wait? Show hide build list. Failed editor checks. Vessel didn't pass editor checks. Acknowledged. That should be fine. This is 13 days to build. This is going to take 20 days to build. So, I guess we can go wait. Okay, everything is good to go. Research takes an hour to roll out. Okay, maybe I have to leave this first. Vab, roll out. There we go. It's gonna take an hour. Shouldn't have to be in here, but and it looks like we'll be at a perfect launch time because this vessel is just reaching its arc where it is in communication range of KSC, which means we should be able to launch and not have to worry about losing signal. Alright, let's hope we can get a repeat of what we just achieved in simulation. That's not what I want open. I want that open. Save it. Open you. Open our maneuver node and launch. So far, so good. He says that hesitantly. Right, we're at about a third thrust on our liquid engine. Delta V of thrust weight of 2. We're going to be staging our solid rocket boosters soon. Alright, apoapsis of 40 kilometers. Let's start tilting this over to the south. I'm not going to stage this for a little bit longer. We're at 63, so we should be fine. Pointed this towards prograde just because I didn't want to flip out again. And then let's quickly rotate over, point towards the horizon, start building up our orbit. Okay, we are now out of the atmosphere, so I can extend these antennas, make sure we can connect to our relay. And let's accelerate a little bit. Don't need you anymore. We can clean up that a little bit. Want to keep our apoapsis below, I believe it's 240 where the transition from space low to space high is. Okay, let's keep focusing on the horizon. All right. I don't want my periapsis to get too high. Keep it below, I'll say 65, so I might have to actually get rid of a little bit of fuel in this stage. Quick save. Right, we did not have any failures there, so we should be good to push our apoapsis up to I'll say 225, just to be sure. Alright, quick save that. Periapsis is above the atmosphere, so we are golden. What is our final inclination at? Advanced orbital information is locked. Can we get our inclination from Kerbal Engineer? Let's look at orbit. Inclination is 89 degrees. I'll take it. Can't see anything, but what I would like to do is start scan, and both of these are already running, which I wasn't even aware that was happening. Now it looks like our periapsis is about here. I mean, I can actually just come here and look at when we get to our apoapsis. Yep, there we go. And one thing, we do have a SCANsat altimeter on here, so what body are we on? We're on Kerbin. This should show us our, the day-night, should show us our orbit overlay. Why aren't we getting, is that just something that we have to unlock? Oh, we lost signal anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh, we just, no, we should be able to, no, we're probably out of the comm range. That's a little annoying, but it's understandable. Now, do we actually accept that contract? I remember us talking about how we didn't have to, but we can hold up to 7 contracts, so I'll just take it anyway. I don't want to risk accidentally going over the 60% and then missing the payout. SCANsat official. Low res of Kerbin. Puts this up at 70. Updating this costs 150. Is there any other cheap money that we can accept? Field research. Kerbal kind achievements. Manned orbit, can't do that for a while. Test this at launch site. That's not really a lot of money. That's us paying out money. Position a satellite equatorial orbit. This will give us 120,000 about. So nothing that will give us too much money. What do we have active? This will give us a lot of money. Trying to figure out what the next steps are. So our ultimate goal at this point is relay around the MUN. Does this MUN, this gives us a communitron, which is not sufficient to communicate with the relay that we have up now. So I would actually, I could launch this and we would get maybe a free return trajectory, but I can't fully plan that out. I could wing it, but I don't trust my abilities that much. I would really prefer to upgrade my tracking station. So my next changes will be A, get this general rocketry. The only thing I actually care for the general rocketry are the struts, the airstream, and the stability enhancer for the launch clamps. Everything else here does give a magnetometer boom. I'm not going to get sidetracked. So those 3 are the main that I would like. That'll cost me about 10,000 all around. So that puts me at 60,000. This is 150k, so 160k total for purchasing. I would then like to have around 40,000 just to ensure that I have what I need. So I need around 200,000 total before I can purchase what I would like, which means I need 130,000. Let's see what... Just flying by the moon will give me 90k. Landing on the moon is something we can't really achieve. Return home. That requires that we had landed on the moon. So we may need to accept one of these orbital changes. One of these orbital contracts. This one's a thermometer. This wants us to go into a high inclination orbit. This one I think would be easier. It is slightly higher than the Mun, which would mean it's about the same delta V requirements as the Mun. The Mun takes about 860 to get there, and then it'll take about... I don't remember the full amount. I think it's about another 500 or 600 to circularize, which means I would need a delta V of around 1700 all round up, which is something that's completely achievable with what we have now. Zero inclination, just wants an apoapsis and a periapsis. Reach the designated equatorial orbit around Kerbin. Have a mystery goo unit. Nope. So I will accept that, and that's something that we can try to work on right now. So I only have about 9 minutes left in the stream. We can design this and then we'll launch it next time. Alright, let's see how fast we can build this up. So we'll take a hex probe. We need a mystery goo unit. We're going to need some... We only really need the one battery. Let's go here. Put those guys on there. We're gonna need this, which will give us a little bit of delta V. It's not the full requirement that we need. So what I'll do is, what am I looking for? Structural. This adapter, just so it looks nice. We're on a small fuel tank. This will give us... Come on, attach on there. Way more delta V that we need. So this will actually provide us with about 600 delta V to finish circularization. Is that how I named these? Save, continue. RSCH001. Call this RSCH002. We'll save that, and you can get deleted right there. Okay, we'll go with that one. In fact, that right there. So this needs to get into orbit. You can actually put a little nose cone on it. Should make it look nicer. This does need to have an antenna. Which that is fine. What I will do is I'll put another one of these batteries on here, which will allow me to pull this up. Once again, this isn't a hard requirement. I just don't like it when it clips, which should then let us go into here, set this to what, 300, and set you to 300 as well. Yep, they can extend. So we gave ourselves, that actually reduced our delta V significantly. So now we only get around 200 delta V to finish circularization, which should be fine. Can actually play around with an intermediate second stage. I like this Valiant. Let's see how much that gives us. The Valiant will give us around 1200 delta V. We only need around 3400 total. So 200 for this upper stage, which brings us down to 3200. 1200 hero brings us down to 2000 delta V. What are the different options for this? Yeah, nothing too exciting. Right, we'll go with a swivel, which in atmosphere gives us around 1600, which means we need 400. We can then pop over here and put a couple hammers on there. Lower our hammers down so they jettison properly. Go to aerodynamics. And we can actually probably lower these down, so we'll be starting on those. Put this over here. Gives us, in atmosphere, 2200. This is 3000 almost then. Yep, so we should be perfectly fine with achieving our orbit and getting to where we want to go. If I lower this down to 30%, puts us at 1.5, lower it down to 25. 1.4, that's perfect. Right? I think this vessel's complete. And we can quickly run a simulation. We don't have full access to our thrust to weight, so I'm not going to be able to get a good accurate answer. I'm going to look into the scrapyard thing after this stream at some point over the next few days and see if I can either fix the issue or find out if it's a configuration thing, or either remove the mod. It's not. If it was just changing the delta V, it'd be fine, but the thrust to weight's where it kind of angers me. It almost seems like every time I'm adjusting some setting, it increases the perceived mass of the vehicle. So that'd be a good. Ooh, this is really starting to pull. I might need some aerodynamic fins on this thing. What is our apoapsis? Ooh, that's starting to pull. Yep, we definitely need some fins. Okay. Got about 3 minutes left. Let's see if we can clutch this. Pulling over a little slow. Normally by this point we'd be almost at the 45-degree marker. But I don't want to risk losing control. Seems to be doing pretty well. apoapsis got pretty high. That's fine. 100 kilometers is an acceptable initial orbit. Let's see, we're above the atmosphere. Pull over a little bit more. My prograde. Space isn't working in map view for some reason. And extend the antennas. So what is our target orbit? Way up here. Okay. Why is this not letting us? Reconditioning. I don't care about reconditioning. All right. See if we have enough Delta V to finish this mission. All right, perfect. And we have a Delta V to spare. All right. So we just saw what we're gonna do. That's pretty much the whole mission. But we're not gonna be able to do it for real until next time because we're about a minute over. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, watching, and leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to. If you have any suggestions for potential missions or nifty things we can do over the next few streams, let me know and I'll definitely take it in consideration. Yeah, appreciate it. See you next time.